I can think of one other thing, Mitch, and it's a tough loss against the Kansas Jayhawks. That's affected my life over the weekend a little bit. But we're turning the page. We're having a little group think and a little therapy here on Cougar Nation. And, of course, it's sponsored by Central Bank. All right, let's get back out to the phone line. Our dear friend from Texas, where we all hope we're going to be in a few weeks. Michael, why did they lose this game to Kansas?
Guys, don't sell your flights. We're going to make it. We're going to win this week. Don't sell your flights. But, no, guys, I just wanted to call. You guys know I'm a huge A-Rod fan. I think he's a great offensive coordinator. The one weakness, and we saw it in Utah too, that just drives me crazy is, like, sometimes he treats the offense like a Make-A-Wish Foundation. Like, everybody gets a little bit. You touch the ball. You touch the ball. It's like, guys, we should have, like, 4 to 5 playmakers for the whole game touch the ball. I don't want to see Tayase on a screen pass. I don't want to see I want to see more of Moa. But like if he's not one of our top 2 running backs, like he shouldn't be carrying the ball twice a game. Like there's just too many packages, too much going on, and you can kind of see it in the communication on the field. Get the ball into Chase Roberts' hands, Darius Lassiter, L.J. Martin should be getting 20 carries. Like, that should be your workload. I think that's my biggest complaint about A-Rod sometimes. I think he makes it way too complicated, way too many people touching the ball. So I hope we see a lot of that. I hope we put the game on the shoulders of our playmakers on Saturday because we're going to need it. So, but I think we win it, and I think we're going to end up in Dallas. So hopefully we'll see you guys out here.
Michael, what gives you confidence that it'll turn around this week at ASU?
We dominated that game. We dominated Kansas. We that game. You look at the stats of that game, and you're just sitting there going, "How in the world did we lose this game?" This is exactly. I said it a few weeks ago when I called you guys. I said we'd go 12-0 unless you had a Boise State 2021. That was Boise State 2021 right there. We dominated that game. There's no way you lose that game when you held them to 80 yards rushing, 10 points besides the helmet fumble. Like that. That's a game you win, and I just think we're making it too complicated on offense, and that's why we're stalling out. There's too much going on. Simplify it. Get it to your best guys.
It's good stuff, Michael. And to kind of echo that point, I had a chat with Hinckley Ropati before this game, and he kind of echoed that sentiment too, that, hey, let's just get back to the simple things. Maybe during that bye week before Utah, we were installing too much. It got a little too complex, and I think that is a good point. There is one position on the team that I think does a really good job of that, and that's the wide receiver group. It's like the same 3 or 4 guys. They get the ball, and I love that. I do want to see that more reflected in the play calling, especially in key moments. On that interception to Taase, which I think we've all probably rewatched a million times, if Jake waits an extra second, Chase is going to be wide open in front of the goal line. Just get the ball to Chase. I think it is a good point there, Mitch, that, hey, get LJ 20 carries, double-digit targets for your top receivers. Just go after the playmakers, and that's something that I want to see them do this week.
We're seeing it more so on the defensive side where you're not just divvying up snaps willy-nilly like we saw in years past. Remember, like a couple years ago, you felt like BYU had a stat where they had more than 40 different starters on the defensive side. You're not seeing that as much. 1, because of health, but 2, Jay Hill's rolling with the guys that got you to 9-0. Play after play, you're rolling with your top dogs, and I think BYU's offense should continue to do that as well. I do like some of the contributions, though, that Hinckley has been providing, but at this juncture, to get a random carry from Sione Aimo, and look, I love the kid. I think he's going to be really good, and you keep him part of that 105-man roster in the future, but the top dogs are LJ and Hinckley until further notice. And, Chase Roberts in the postgame, he acknowledged that these close calls and needing late heroics, that needs to change as BYU needs to start beating teams by more.
We need to start beating teams by 20 points, 30 points, because that's the kind of offense we have. That's the kind of team we have. And we should have this game. And it was frustrating that we couldn't convert and couldn't get points on the board in the red zone. And we got to learn from our mistakes, learn what we can do better as an offense, and make better decisions as well as we're in the red zone, and make better reads, run better routes as receivers, make sure we get our depth and stuff like that. So But we'll go back, watch the film, and learn and grow.
And the difference between a 20-point win and the loss, Mitch, was like, 4 plays? You get a touchdown before the half. You get a touchdown on the long drive to start the third quarter. If you get those 2 things, the doink doesn't happen, so that's another 7 points off. It's these few little things, and they've got to find a way to recapture that red zone success earlier in the season. 2 straight weeks it's been bad, and even in the second half against UCF, it wasn't great. But throughout the whole season, they've been pretty good in the red zone. That gives me a little hope that it can be turned around. This hasn't been a season-long trend per se, but the past couple of weeks, it hasn't been good enough. And that's, if you don't execute there, that's why you lose these games. That's why you're not beating people by a lot of points. And unfortunately, that margin of victory, it does matter when determining your entrance into the playoff or not.
And I think also with this game, when it comes to the struggles on offense, we have to ask ourselves too, how much intel did Jeff Grimes provide to Brian Borland, their defensive coordinator at Kansas, that hit? The scout, the install that they put in for that week, how much of that was accurate? And that intel was enough to get really this Kansas defense in a spot where they had a lot of success. You have to wonder. I mean, all the different – in a game of inches like the Big 12 is, where games are basically a coin flipped, those little margins can play a big role. Now, on the flip side, BYU knows Jeff Grimes' ways and tendencies, and they had familiarity with the personnel of Kansas, and BYU's defense, by all accounts, was pretty dang good outside of that first drive to open the game. So I'm going to stay optimistic that BYU can bounce back. And in a strange way, guys, I feel like BYU's going to bounce back in a big way coming up potentially this week, because I am confident that this team will flush it down and move on and not let one loss turn into 2. But you got to see success finishing drives, and I just think that's been a big point of contention, and that's where a lot of the texts are centered on too. Texter 3324, Roderick needs to learn how to call plays in the red zone. He doesn't have a plan at all. The jet sweep doesn't work on a bad field to the short side of the field. And on Jake's pick, that should have been a run call. BYU had plenty of time. It was first down or throw the ball away. Why does Roderick complicate things in the red zone? It's a fair question.
Can I add this too, though? I did not think that was Aaron Roderick's best game. However, Jake Retzlaff, that was his worst game of the season. Really, to me, Jake lost that football game. If you want to put the blame on one guy, I would put it on Jake. Jake is the one who checked into the option play on the short side of the field. That wasn't the play call.
On 3rd and 6?
Yes, on 3rd and 6. That's Jake's fault. If you want to check into the option, great, but not to the short side of the field. Like, that's entirely on Jake. And that fade play that we're complaining about, I don't love the play call, but if it's executed, then it's an incomplete pass. You can't make that poor of a throw in that situation. And there were other throws too where the ball was sailing all over the place. Jake has had 2 straight weeks where he has played below what we've seen all this season. And if he doesn't turn it around, and he had 2 overthrows in that game that completely changed the game. Darius Lassiter wide open for a 50-yard touchdown. Let him run underneath that thing. If Jake plays better football, you win that game. Jake was bad in that game, and so as much as you want to point to A-Rod in certain situations, if your quarterback can't get the job done, can't make the right reads, can't make the right throws, what can you do, Mitch?
It's a great point, and we're asking at Cougar Nation, what was the number one reason BYU lost to Kansas? Got a response from Grant Lundberg. He actually gives 2 responses. 1, poor offensive execution, causing a lack of point production. And 2, defense unable to get a stop on 3rd down. Interesting.
Except for they only allowed 33% of 3rd downs. They're 4
I'm not
12.
poking at the defense on
Totally.
this one.
There's really nothing to complain about defensively, Mitch.
Other than the first drive.
Right.
I thought that first drive is like, is BYU asleep at the wheel? But they responded. And, I do think that this team, Matt, they have got to be the team that starts first. And look, they've had an ability to dig themselves out of holes. Oklahoma State, Utah, I get it. But they got to be that team that strikes first, it feels like. It's important for this group. And that's going to be something to monitor moving forward into the stretch run of the season. Get an early lead to kind of settle the nerves a little bit. And when Kansas just moved down the field, That didn't bode well for BYU, but credit the defense for responding and showing quite well against the Kansas offense that had 540-plus yards against Iowa State the week prior.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Maybe just take the ball first. If that's what you're better at, then just take the ball.
Kalani's never done that. He's never done that when he wins coin tosses, but maybe that's the move. But it's kind of a hat tip to Lavelle. It's what Lavelle used to do, but maybe he's got to change it up a bit.
I would agree. Let's take the break. News, traffic, and weather coming your way. On the other side, we'll get to what's trending up and down.